This story is about seeds.
Seed means life. Seed means livelihood. Seed means our culture.
Naweka mbili.
Kuwekea watu sheria wakati wananunua mbegu si vizuri.
So when it was revised in 2012, it included certain punitive aspects.
Lakini mimi mkulima niko na hizo zote na serikali imenifunga mikono.
You have to borrow a loan so that you can plant maize because it's very expensive because of input.
Kupata hii mbegu ni shinda kwangu.
If an old grandmother from mashinani wants to access these services like the Kenya seeds, you would imagine a shosho would not really access where these stores are.
Kilimo mimi nafanya kwa sababu ya chakula.
Siwezi kumbuka kama tulinunua mbegu kwa watu, kwa any shop.
You see from regulations down to the bills and then to the regulation, the threats. It's nonsense.
In light of now what these reports are saying, do you have any regrets?
Yes, I do.
This story is about seeds.
Seed means life. Seed means livelihood. Seed means our culture.
Naweka mbili.
Kuwekea watu sheria wakati wananunua mbegu si vizuri.
So when it was revised in 2012, it included certain punitive aspects.
Lakini mimi mkulima niko na hizo zote na serikali imenifunga mikono.
You have to borrow a loan so that you can plant maize because it's very expensive because of input.
Kupata hii mbegu ni shinda kwangu.
If an old grandmother from mashinani wants to access these services like the Kenya seeds, you would imagine a shosho would not really access where these stores are.
Kilimo mimi nafanya kwa sababu ya chakula.
Siwezi kumbuka kama tulinunua mbegu kwa watu, kwa any shop.
You see from regulations down to the bills and then to the regulation, the threats. It's nonsense.
In light of now what these reports are saying, do you have any regrets?
Yes, I do.
This story is about seeds.
Seed means life. Seed means livelihood. Seed means our culture.
Naweka mbili.
Kuwekea watu sheria wakati wananunua mbegu si vizuri.
So when it was revised in 2012, it included certain punitive aspects.
Lakini mimi mkulima niko na hizo zote na serikali imenifunga mikono.
You have to borrow a loan so that you can plant maize because it's very expensive because of input.
Kupata hii mbegu ni shinda kwangu.
If an old grandmother from mashinani wants to access these services like the Kenya seeds, you would imagine a shosho would not really access where these stores are.
Kilimo mimi nafanya kwa sababu ya chakula.
Siwezi kumbuka kama tulinunua mbegu kwa watu, kwa any shop.
You see from regulations down to the bills and then to the regulation, the threats. It's nonsense.
In light of now what these reports are saying, do you have any regrets?
Yes, I do.
This story is about seeds.
Seed means life. Seed means livelihood. Seed means our culture.
Naweka mbili.
Kuwekea watu sheria wakati wananunua mbegu si vizuri.
So when it was revised in 2012, it included certain punitive aspects.
Lakini mimi mkulima niko na hizo zote na serikali imenifunga mikono.
You have to borrow a loan so that you can plant maize because it's very expensive because of input.
Kupata hii mbegu ni shinda kwangu.
If an old grandmother from mashinani wants to access these services like the Kenya seeds, you would imagine a shosho would not really access where these stores are.
Kilimo mimi nafanya kwa sababu ya chakula.
Siwezi kumbuka kama tulinunua mbegu kwa watu, kwa any shop.
You see from regulations down to the bills and then to the regulation, the threats. It's nonsense.
In light of now what these reports are saying, do you have any regrets?
Yes, I do.
This story is about seeds.
Seed means life. Seed means livelihood. Seed means our culture.
Naweka mbili.
Kuwekea watu sheria wakati wananunua mbegu si vizuri.
So when it was revised in 2012, it included certain punitive aspects.
Lakini mimi mkulima niko na hizo zote na serikali imenifunga mikono.
You have to borrow a loan so that you can plant maize because it's very expensive because of input.
Hata kupata hii mbegu ni shida kwangu.
If an old grandmother from Mashinani wants to access these services, like the Kenya seeds, you would imagine a shosho would not really access where these stores are.
Kilimo mimi nafanya kwa sababu ya chakula.
Siwezi kumbuka kama tulinunua mbegu kwa watu, kwa any shop.
You see, from regulations down to the bills and then to the regulation, the threats, it's nonsense.
In light of now what these reports are saying, do you have any regrets?
Yes, I do.
This story is about seeds.
Seed means life. Seed means livelihood. Seed means our culture.
Naweka mbili.
Kuwekea watu sheria wakati wananunua mbegu si vizuri.
So when it was revised in 2012, it included certain punitive aspects.
Lakini mimi mkulima niko na hizo zote na serikali imenifunga mikono.
You have to borrow a loan so that you can plant maize because it's very expensive because of input.
Hata kupata hii mbegu ni shida kwangu.
If an old grandmother from Mashinani wants to access these services, like the Kenya seeds, you would imagine a shosho would not really access where these stores are.
Kilimo mimi nafanya kwa sababu ya chakula.
Siwezi kumbuka kama tulinunua mbegu kwa watu, kwa any shop.
You see, from regulations down to the bills and then to the regulation, the threats, it's nonsense.
In light of now what these reports are saying, do you have any regrets?
Yes, I do.
This story is about seeds.
Seed means life. Seed means livelihood. Seed means our culture.
Naweka mbili.
Kuwekea watu sheria wakati wananunua mbegu si vizuri.
So when it was revised in 2012, it included certain punitive aspects.
Lakini mimi mkulima niko na hizo zote na serikali imenifunga mikono.
You have to borrow a loan so that you can plant maize because it's very expensive because of input.
Hata kupata hii mbegu ni shida kwangu.
If an old grandmother from Mashinani wants to access these services, like the Kenya seeds, you would imagine a shosho would not really access where these stores are.
Kilimo mimi nafanya kwa sababu ya chakula.
Siwezi kumbuka kama tulinunua mbegu kwa watu, kwa any shop.
You see, from regulations down to the bills and then to the regulation, the threats, it's nonsense.
In light of now what these reports are saying, do you have any regrets?
Yes, I do.
This story is about seeds.
Seed means life. Seed means livelihood. Seed means our culture.
Naweka mbili.
Kuwekea watu sheria wakati wananunua mbegu si vizuri.
So when it was revised in 2012, it included certain punitive aspects.
Lakini mimi mkulima niko na hizo zote na serikali imenifunga mikono.
You have to borrow a loan so that you can plant maize because it's very expensive because of input.
Hata kupata hii mbegu ni shida kwangu.
If an old grandmother from Mashinani wants to access these services, like the Kenya seeds, you would imagine a shosho would not really access where these stores are.
Kilimo mimi nafanya kwa sababu ya chakula.
Siwezi kumbuka kama tulinunua mbegu kwa watu, kwa any shop.
You see, from regulations down to the bills and then to the regulation, the threats, it's nonsense.
In light of now what these reports are saying, do you have any regrets?
Yes, I do.
This story is about seeds.
Seed means life. Seed means livelihood. Seed means our culture.
Naweka mbili.
Kuwekea watu sheria wakati wananunua mbegu si vizuri.
So when it was revised in 2012, it included certain punitive aspects.
Lakini mimi mkulima niko na hizo zote na serikali imenifunga mikono.
You have to borrow a loan so that you can plant maize because it's very expensive because of input.
Hata kupata hii mbegu ni shida kwangu.
If an old grandmother from Mashinani wants to access these services, like the Kenya seeds, you would imagine a shosho would not really access where these stores are.
Kilimo mimi nafanya kwa sababu ya chakula.
Siwezi kumbuka kama tulinunua mbegu kwa watu, kwa any shop.
You see, from regulations down to the bills and then to the regulation, the threats, it's nonsense.
In light of of now what these reports are saying, do you have any regrets?
Yes, I do.
This story is about seeds.
Seed means life. Seed means livelihood. Seed means our culture.
Naweka mbili. Kuwekea watu sheria wakati wananunua mbegu si vizuri.
So when it was revised in 2012, it included certain punitive aspects.
Lakini mimi mkulima niko na hizo zote na serikali imenifunga mikono.
You have to borrow a loan so that you can plant maize because it's very expensive because of input.
Kupata hii mbegu ni shinda kwangu.
If an old grandmother from Mashinani wants to access these services, like the Kenya seeds, you would imagine a shosho would not really access where these stores are.
Kilimo mimi nafanya kwa sababu ya chakula.
Siwezi kumbuka kama tulinunua mbegu kwa watu, kwa any shop.
You see from regulations down to the bills and then...
Hello and welcome to this episode of The Big Picture. This is where depth meets humor. I'm your lead host of the day. My name is Tom Ukwana, and as always, I do it with...
Justine Wanda. Hi, everyone.
Justine Wanda. Wamepan Pia. It's like they've been doing this for 4 weeks now, so they get the drill. But welcome once more. This should be one of the last episodes of the year. So again, I'll wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. This episode is solely dedicated to one topic, the topic of seed sovereignty in Kenya. Justine and I are obviously not experts in this subject. We wouldn't do any justice to it. And because of that, we're joined by two guests who stand on different sides of supporting seed sovereignty in the country. This episode specifically comes weeks after, maybe 2 weeks, around 2 weeks after the High Court struck down a very, some would describe it as colonialist in nature, or should you say corporation-led, but a law that disadvantages smallholder farmers in Kenya greatly. The two guests that I mentioned are, first of all, a senior investigative reporter here at Uncensored, award-winning investigative journalist for that matter, Cynthia Gishiri. Cynthia just recently did a story titled Seed Syndicate, right? Yeah. She'll tell us more about that story, but it explores the subject of seed sovereignty, looks into the history, and exposes the parties who have brought us to this juncture. And the second guest is Elizabeth Atieno. Elizabeth Atieno is a food campaigner with Greenpeace International, but that's not all she does. She's a passionate food sovereignty advocate on a mission to help create a food-secure Africa where communities not only grow food sustainably, but also have fair and equitable access to nutritious meals. It's a strong statement.
I know.
We're glad to have you here, Elizabeth. You'll tell us more about every word of this sentence that I've just read. But we'll start, first of all, with the basics, Elizabeth and Cynthia. Cynthia, your story looks into the evolution of this law, but I find it very, should I say, worrying that the topic of this law and the implications that this law, I think it can have, we can't say could, because the government is going to appeal the High Court decision. So it might be overturned entirely. But this wasn't a headline for months. And that's worrying to me because of the potential impact of this on the breadbasket of the country. Why? Why do you think that is, and why should people care about the Seed and Plant Varieties Act?
Yeah, I think maybe I can start by, to understand this conversation, we need to understand what the Kenya seed system is and how it actually works. And then now we can go into the basics of why are we not seeing like a lot of anger actually coming from Kenyans when it comes to this conversation. And in Kenya, we have two seed systems. So we have what they're calling the formal system, which is where we have the corporate seeds that are being produced by commercial seed breeders. And then we have what they call the informal seed system. I usually don't like that word. I prefer calling it the farmer-managed seed systems because there's nothing informal about it. Farmers manage this system every single season. They just don't do it from Nairobi in their offices. So I don't think it's fair for us to call it informal. So I refer to it as farmer-managed seed systems. And this is what is literally feeding us as a country. because 80% of the seeds that we depend on in the country comes from these farmer managed seed systems. And this is what small-scale farmers, our mothers, our grandmothers, our grandparents, this is where they get the seeds that they use to give us our food. And these two systems are being governed by the Seed and Plants Varieties Act, CAP 326 of 2012, and its accompanying seed regulations. And on paper, it's actually very technical, and Cynthia can attest to that. I know she had to go through all, exactly, when watching on the documentary. It's so technical, but also on paper, when you look at it, it looks so, what's the word? So fair. But in reality, it's not. It's very deeply unequal, and it's disturbing. And this is because when you look at the Act, seed is first seen as a property, as a commercial property, rather than life, rather than culture, rather than heritage. And because of that, we have these very punitive clauses in the Act. And what the Seed Act was meant to do was to regulate the seed quality, because we were saying that we want to make sure that we have not the fake seeds. Africa Uncensored once did a documentary around fake seeds, fertilizers.
Cynthia did the documentary.
Exactly, yeah. So they were saying that the reason why we need to have this act in place is because we are looking at the issue of seed quality. And another thing too was to support breeding and innovation and see how do we regulate that, how do we make sure that, we look at the issue of seed quality when it comes to that. So basically the act is supposed to govern and more like give peace, kinda, and when it comes to the seed sector, to help regulate that. But what it's actually doing, it's defining what a legal seed is. And according to the Act, the definition of what the legality of a seed and the quality of a seed, it's very narrow. Because it just look at seeds as what it's supposed to go through the commercial testing processes, and that's it. It doesn't look at seed from our knowledge, the knowledge that was passed through our grandparents, the knowledge that farmers have kept on alive all this time. I think we all know there are seasons when you'll hear someone say, I want, right now it's season, mangoes from Kambani. There's this specific fruit that comes from this region. And we usually just say that and make fun of it, but it's really important because these seeds are actually acclimatized to these local environments. So you find that, for example, that specific variety of mango cannot grow maybe in the Rift Valley because maybe the weather there it cannot do well. What is growing in Rift Valley cannot do well in Machakos and all that. So there is a lot of knowledge that goes into this, and there is a lot of work that our farmers have already put in. So when we talk about the seed sector, I think the big question is, who was this system designed for, and who is profiting from it?
Which was actually my next question, and Cynthia, this will go to you. Who asked for this law? Who asked for it? Where is it coming from, and when did it first land?
According to the research I was able to do, the seed law originated from an act that was an international agreement that was made in 1961. It's called the UPOV, Union for Protection of New Plant Varieties. And it's called the UPOV Act. It was amended thrice. And in 1978, it gave some guidelines about what to do in terms of developing new crop varieties, even in terms of durations for plant breeder rights. And then it was amended in 1991, whereby now it brought along more stringent measures and stringent laws. For example, it increased the period of plant protection to 20 to 25 years for crops and trees and vines respectively. And so in between 1999, when Kenya joined UPOV with the 1978 Act, and when now this SPVA 2012 was passed, there was a rush, especially from the developing nations, to be able to assent to either of the UPOV Acts. By then, Kenya had not acceded to the 91 Act, but then now the pressure to accede to the 91 Act came about immediately after Kibaki came to power around 2005, 2006, whereby there was need to create task forces that now would look into the law. At that time, Kenya already had a seed law that had undergone minor amendments, I think in 98, and then another one in 2002. Now, after 2002, that is when now there was a lot of activities between the Ministry of Agriculture, the Plant Breeders Association of Kenya. We also had the Seed Trade Association of Kenya, and also the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service. So there has been a lot of activity, but now, according to what I was able to find out in my research, remember I was also quoting Dr. Claire O'Grady-Walsh. Also, I even noticed that her work was also used in the litigation against the law, is that the main pushers of these, or the main people who are advocating for these changes, were actually big agrochemical companies like Syngenta, Monsanto, and also the Kenya Seed Company. So the push was to align the Kenyan laws with the 1991 UPOV 91 Act, even if at that time in 2012 Kenya had not acceded to the UPOV 91 Act, which it did later in 2016. Yeah.
I'm going to ask a question that is very, I don't know how you'll take this, but I appreciate being direct. The question everyone will want to ask is, what was President Ruto's role in this?
Yes.
No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
That is the only thing I can do.
No, but seriously, Justine, Cynthia, in your story you mentioned that at the time he was Minister for Agriculture, he played a role in this act landing in Parliament. But further away from him, a lot of committees were also involved.
Yeah.
What was the political influence or interference with this law?
I got an opportunity to interview the former MP for Naivasha, John Mutudho. At that time, especially in the 10th Parliament, that was from 2007, he sat in the Committee of Agriculture as the chair. And so during this time, also Dr. Claire O'Grady writes that is when Task Force 2, the recommendations that were put forward by Task Force 2, that is when now they began pushing them, especially to the members of Parliament. So one way in which these lawmakers were involved is they attended meetings that were meant to kind of lobby for the passage of this law. And there's one particular meeting that Dr. Walsh notes in her book that was it was on 25th, 28th of September in 2006. And then after that now, when Ruto got into government as the Minister of Agriculture in 2008, he was able to fast track 2 subsidiary laws. I think I was able to jot them down. So the first one was the Seeds and Plant Varieties Regulations of 2009. And the second one was the Seeds and Plant Varieties, regulations about the National Performance Trials in 2009. So Dr. Walsh notes that these 2 laws were fast-tracked. By fast-track, she means that they were passed without there being a rigorous parliamentary debate. Nobody questioned. And that is one of the things that in a phone interview, which I did as a follow-up interview with Honorable Mutudho, that is one of the things that I noted. And he even said that at that time, nobody had told them about the impact or the nitty-gritties of these laws. They were just selling things like certified seeds are drought resistant, high yielding, those and early maturing. So those are even when you look at how the varieties are listed, on the national crop variety list. Those are the qualities that are given. So Mutudo says that, and that is on record. We have a record of that interview, is that at that time they were not informed. Nobody came to inform them about the nitty-gritties of the law. But also, picture this, at that time also CSOs were not represented in the task forces. Farmers were also not represented in the task forces. So who would then have told the MPs that whatever you're passing is going to eventually harm our agriculture?
I think I do have a question about this and Like, I think one of the things that's really throwing me off is, first of all, we're just seeing like a commitment to zero public participation. Like you can just, it's just like an inbred thing that the person leading this administration keeps doing. It's like, why do you want to know? Like, can't you trust us? And I'm like, no. Like, first of all, if you're already a minister, and there are channels between all these different systems that make sure that there's some kind of research, some kind of accountability, and these offices already have these structures in place. So my question is to you, when there's a disconnect in the lawmakers and the people who this is going to affect, and they're obviously selling this as you want a drought-resistant crop.
To help you.
Yeah, like exactly. Tunawasaidia mbona mnakata? Like what's the place of, like how does the parliament connect with the people on the ground, the people they're supposed to represent when it comes to very critical laws affecting them? How can they either make the connection, how can they reach out? And I know you're kupiga simu ilikuja juzi, but what's literally a thing that a farmer can do to reach out, especially to all these different institutional supports that they're supposed to have before a law is passed, or even after that you guys as Greenpeace don't have to come and say, hey, this is bad. Like, how do you make the connection before the thing happens?
I think we need to start by identifying the fact that behind the government, there are really powerful lobbyists who come with a lot of money. Cynthia mentioned something around the year 2000s. This is when the conversations around we need more fertilizers, we need more pesticides, we need breeded seeds started really to catch up in Kenya. And the question is, why at this time? It's because we had AGRA, which was pushing for a green revolution for Africa. They were coming to feed and make sure that we are nutrient secure and all that. And AGRA came to Africa with lots of funding from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Rockefeller Foundation. So they came armed with money, and governments were willing to welcome them very quickly so that they can help progress things, because money was exchanging hands. And that's usually the problem. It's the propaganda of how we need to commercialize our food system is just not happening within the policy space. It's also happening out here. You go to the different media stations and you find that most of these multinational companies, they pay a lot of money to make sure that they get the adverts during the prime time. That's when they're telling you about this pesticide and this seed and all that. So there's a lot of resources that is being put behind this lobbying, and to not only brainwash, I can call it brainwashing, not only brainwash our policymakers but also our farmers, because when the rush for the industrialization of the food sector in general in Africa came, even our farmers started believing that I have to use the breeded seeds, I have to go for the synthetic fertilizers and these pesticides so that I can be able to get more and get more. So you find that, and it's because they were really even going to the ground. They have people on the ground who are taking farmers through trainings, who are giving loans and credits and all that. And our government is not doing that. So you find that they looked at what are some of the gaps that were there, and they came and filled those gaps. In the agricultural ministry, they were like, we have money for you guys to sit and make policies. On the ground, we have extension officers who can help farmers do ABCD. So you find that they go down there and they're armed. They even have offices at those small towns where you find that a farmer will tell you the last time they saw an extension officer from the government, they can't even remember. I was just having a conversation with my mom when we won, and my mom was like, because I made a point about need to have extension officers on the ground to help train farmers and all that. And my mom was like, are they still there? Do they still exist? Because they don't even go there. If you want to get an extension officer, you have to go to the county office, you have to pay for their transport and all that. So the problem is...
to pay for their transport?
Yeah, exactly. If you don't do that, they don't come.
You and you call them to something.
Yes, exactly.
It's like...
Kenya Police.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you find that there are gaps, and these people saw the gaps and they came and filled it. And they were not filling it because they cared about us being food secure. They were filling it because of the profit that they get when it comes to this. So there is an opportunity for even small-scale farmers to be involved in this process. And one of the key things when we initially came across this story and we were doing community engagements, we realized that farmers were not even aware that this was in place. Farmers like, where, how, when? So nowadays, at least there's that, there's public participation at the county level, and we keep on encouraging our farmers to make sure that they're there. When you go to the county level, one of the sectors that gets the biggest chunks of the budgets, it's the agricultural sector. In most counties, because they keep on using this phrase to say agriculture is the backbone of our county. Agriculture is the backbone of our county. But where does that money go? Does it go to supporting farmers? That is, go to support these community seed banks that we have? Why do we have to depend on a seed that has come from the lab when we have 20 years, 30 years, 40 years of knowledge that has gone into these seeds? And there's also this conversation and this assumption that indigenous seeds are inferior to the breeded seeds. That is not true. They actually use indigenous seeds as the primary resource for their own seeds. So they go and look at the different characteristics. No, they don't. That's the thing. And that's why we had a problem with the Act, because it does a very good job to protect the intellectual property rights of breeders. But when it comes to the rights of farmers and everything, it's quiet on that. There's nothing there. So the law looks at seed as something that can be owned, can be protected, can be restricted. So that's why they do a very good job to make sure that we have these intellectual property rights. It's like when you say you have copyright for music or a trademark for a name or a logo. You cannot do that with a seed. When you go to most of the communities we have in Kenya, the seeds are community property. They are not an individual property. Actually, even communities identify by specific seeds. Hii inakuanga yetu. Ukienda hivi njahe and all that. Like, you just mentioned some seeds and people already relate it to a specific tribal community. So why, instead of doing a very good job to make sure that we are protecting the breeders, why are we not protecting our farmers? And one of the big arguments that the government had around having this act, they were saying we are looking at the quality of the seeds, we are looking at the issue of food safety because of diseases and all that. You don't have even one fucking, I'm so sorry about that. You don't even have 2 extension officers to help with community training, community education, and then the best you can do is to criminalize farmers. You can't do that. You don't even have a budget for community seed banks. There are community protocols. Our neighbors, for example, in Uganda, they are doing a very good job when it comes to community training and community protocols to do, they are calling it, Francis used that word in your community citizen science. Exactly. Those are the opportunities. Those are the places where we're supposed to take our money. We have gold, and we are giving away our gold to get something that is not working. And I don't know if, Cynthia, you can also attest to this. When you talk to most of these farmers, they tell you that it's a really bad cycle of debt. You have to buy these seeds, you have to buy the pesticides, because they tell you, even when you go to the agrovet, they tell you, hii seed ukichukwanga inaendanga na hii pesticide or na hii fertilizer. So they have to get all this, and then why are we not seeing food insecurity go down in the country? Why are the food prices going up and up and up if we are really like supporting our farmers to produce more? So I think right now, the best weapon that we have, especially at the local level, are those public participation spaces. And then right now, you can call your MP and tell them right now they're going to appeal, and we're not going to give up. We're still going to go with them head to head. But you're also planning to send a memorandum to Parliament to tell them, because it's actually the work of the Parliament to enact laws that favor small-scale farmers and for the good of the country. So we are going to send a memorandum to Parliament, and we'll need the support of every single Kenyan to make sure that their MP supports that and make sure that we have a new seed law in place. And please don't think that this is far away from you because you're not a small-scale farmer. This is not about me. It's shida ule mkulima kwa nyumbani. No, that's why you go to the mama mboga and you buy avocado at 40 bob na unarudi kwa nyumba ukicomplain. Or you get one tomato at 30 bob or 20 bob. It's because the farmers are really struggling to produce food. They produce 80% of the food that we eat as a country. So if we don't support them in how they're producing food, what does that mean? It means that we'll continue to see food insecurity go up, malnutrition go up, lifestyle diseases go up. Unaenda kwa shop unanunua nyanya 30 bob. And then you come and sit down and complain. No, it's because you're allowing the government to have these punitive policies that are taking money out of the country instead of putting money on the farmers' hands.
Cynthia, speaking of smallholder farmers, in your story there's a character that you follow to the Kenya Seed Company to purchase seeds. And there's something he says to the guy at the counter. He tells him, can I get the seeds? And the guy tells him, there's a queue. The earliest you can get it is August. There's a queue to get seeds to plant. So that means that farmer cannot plant those seeds at that time, even though they need it, which is mind-blowing to me. Then he goes on to ask, to tell the counter guy goes on to tell him that actually there kuna msea kona bags kama 1,000 anangojea. Then the guy responds and asks him, so what's the place of smallholder farmers when there are people who can buy at a scale such as that? I'm thinking about the effect this could have on small-scale farmers, which are a majority of Kenyans. All of us here know someone who plants. So most of us here have shags. There's a place to go to in December. And just you should be happy because a lot of drama comes with that. But most of us have a place to go to in December, and it's usually in the countryside where people plant. Your grandmother plants the food she eats. What could that do to a regular farmer, Cynthia? And if this law stayed, because it was enacted and stayed for a while, it was implemented for a while, what would that change about the way your grandmother farms?
Okay. That problem I noticed was very major with potato seeds. One thing I noticed in my investigation about potato seeds is that the suppliers are they are located at very distant and very rural regions, like regions that are known to produce potatoes. So for example, for my grandmother, for her to access the potato seed, she had to either go to Elbagon or to Njoro or to Mount Narok, which are very, you will need to hire a vehicle to be able to ferry the bags of potato. And then there was also another farmer called Lucy Wanjiru. She's a casual laborer. There was also that dynamic that we no longer now have just small scale farmers. I think we also have smaller scale farmers who are casual laborers who rely on small scale farmers to be able to farm and afford to buy seeds and fertilizer. And this smaller scale farmer called Lucy, she was able to struggle to get 2 kg packets of seed for her 1/4 acre plot, but she was not able to raise the money for fertilizer and CAN which she needed. And when we went to witness her harvest, it wasn't that good. And then now, because she could not afford the 5,000 shillings for a bag of potato seeds, she had to buy from another farmer. And one thing about certified seeds, and every farmer will attest, is that you cannot replant. It's not like the indigenous variety. I remember when I was growing up, when we were helping out my grandmother in the village, there were some varieties of maize and potatoes that she would save as a seed for the next planting season. So with the certified seeds, you cannot do that. You will not harvest a single thing.
So it's engineered to have you come back all the time.
Yeah.
It's also illegal. It was illegal for you to replant without permission.
Yeah, actually that is in Article 23 of the law. It prohibits the use of a harvest of a protected variety as a propagating material. So that now what that does to a farmer, it subjects the farmer to a continuous cycle of debt. And if a small-scale farmer does not have maybe a child working in town who can support their farming, trust me, they are not going to be able to plant. We experience that a lot with my grandmother. Sometimes the fertilizer prices are too high. Sometimes the seed is in low supply, and so the prices go high. So each of us knows that in April, during the planting season, we all have to save something for grandma. Or else when we go home in December, we'll not come back to Nairobi with anything. So that is what it subjects the farmer to. And if you do not have children who can support you or an income, then most of the times you find now farmers going back to the shops to buy food, which is unfair.
Which is unfair.
Yeah.
If farmers themselves have to buy food, what does this even mean for our agricultural future? Because I think, one of the things that really throws me off, especially about how complicit the government is I think so many of them either are commercial farmers, like they can actually afford, because of their salaries and their positions in power, they can actually afford to kind of extract. Yeah, because they have money, or like they have some kind of financial support already. But there's no connection back to the farmer, because then they can benefit off of their distraction. And my question would be then, who is really profiting? Like, who is really profiting? Because I think also the chain has to go further. Like, nani anachukua hii power yote from farmers, and who is then now making the money, and who is also dictating it? Because I know you've mentioned the agrochemical companies and everything, but I would like some kind of structure who is benefiting from the lobbying side, and also from taking power away from farmers. Yeah, and I think this will go to Cynthia too, because I think I want to hear from both of you, because like there's a part of the documentary you did where there was this long list of like people registering their names against certain seeds. That's why I'm very curious to know who's profiting. So I think Cynthia will go first, and then Elizabeth.
Okay, there are different types of seed breeders. I think at the top of the food chain are the seed breeders, because for every 1 kg of seed you purchase, they get a certain percentage for 20 years. Let's take an example of maize. Lucy bought a packet of the 6213 variety of maize. It's registered under Kenya Seed Company. So at 550, there's a certain percentage that Kenya Seed gets from every farmer. So you can imagine maize being a staple for Kenya, a Kenya staple food. How many kilograms of maize seed are purchased every year? So you do the math, and it's not just maize. Kenya Seed, I think, also owns a number of seed varieties. Now we go to potato. You'll need 16 bags for 1 acre of the, let's say now, the variety that we featured in our story, the Shangi variety. It's very popular. One of the things I was told by one of the characters called Njuguna is that the farmers do not decide what they want to plant. It's the brokers who tell them, if you plant another variety, we will not buy. So we'll only buy this particular variety because it has desirable qualities. So 16 bags, each bag going for a minimum between 4,800 for the best quality seed and 5,000. You can imagine how much, even if it was just 5%. And you had this vendor telling us that he had a queue of 20,000 farmers. And there are farmers who are buying as many as 600 bags, 1,000 bags. How much money are they getting? So I was also able to look at the database. We have 175 certified seed merchants. Those are the ones who are controlling the seed trade in the country. 175, which include the conglomerates and also public universities also getting into the business.
Wait, universities are in the business of
yeah, we do have actually, I think I saw 2. Yes. I saw Egerton University, and another one, is it Chuka? I think. Yeah, it's also a seed breeder. Yeah, so they are the seed breeders, who are very many, and then there are the seed merchants, who are 175. Yeah, so those are the ones who are benefiting. Yeah, because now every year, that's a cycle.
Everyone has to go buy, and so that they can plant. They can't actually use any other seed varieties.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
very scary.
It's a subscription model.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And Elizabeth, from your POV, who's also benefiting from this system?
I think this is one of the areas maybe Cynthia can also help us do investigations, but I know most of the political class have a stake in the agricultural sector, either in the fertilizer business, the pesticides business, or the seed business. And that's why when they put such policies in place, they know that it's going to benefit them. And sadly, even right now, we are moving towards a situation where even the Kenya seed companies is going to be privatized.
Yes,
Can you imagine what that is going to do to like our food sovereignty as a country? How can we call ourselves a sovereign country? How can we say that we are free when we don't have control over the food that we eat? Because if you don't have control over your seed, you literally don't have control over the food that you eat. I remember the last time when there was the war in, was it
Ukraine.
Russia and Ukraine, and we were being told we cannot get bread, we cannot get all that. Can you imagine what that tells us? It means that with the direction we are taking, we are going to get to a point where we will not have control of our food. So if our neighbors, not even our neighbors, if people from miles away decide to fight and close their borders, then we are not going to be able to produce food because there are not going to be seeds. And we saw the situation where farmers are literally looking for specific seeds because they've already been used to using these breeded seeds. So does it mean that tomorrow when COVID-20 or whatever happens, and then we have already sold all our seeds to especially multinational companies, does it mean that we're going to sit here and not eat?
Supply chains, if they interrupt again.
Exactly. Does it mean that, you see, it means that we are losing something so very fundamental as a country, and it's because we are just allowing policies that we know very well that are not for us and for our people. And I think it also maybe it's not a problem too for the political class, because I don't think for them 75,000 shillings is something. When you tell a small-scale farmer, I need you to use 75,000 Kenyan shillings to certify one variety of seed. When you go home, I was born in the village. If, for example, it's a bean seed, my mom has 5 of them, not one. So when you say that she needs 75,000 Kenya shillings to go through the certification process, which is already very complex. That is an amount of money that most farmers do not even make by the end of the whole season. They don't. So I feel like it's because the political class are not really involved in the small business, which is them making sure that they at least have a decent living from farming. For them, it's more of like, how can I make more money when it comes to exports? How can I make more money when I'm selling seeds, when I'm selling pesticides and fertilizers? And that's why we need to be mad as a country. We really need to say that, no, this cannot go on. You are messing with the food. Food is very essential. We cannot even be seated here without food. So why are we letting the country, the government, just mess around with the food that we are eating the way they want? And then right now we are looking at issues of the lifestyle diseases and all that. We are being told it's because of the food that we're eating. Most of the food that we're eating, it's either it's poisoned by the pesticides or it doesn't have any nutritional value to us. So are we going to allow that to continue happening? Where like right now we hear someone is 70 and like, oh, I'm Africa 70 because it's a big deal nowadays. It's like you're 70, we see like it's something that it's not even supposed to happen. So I think this is a conversation that needs to make us mad, because even right now when you go back home, the food that you're going to eat in one way or another, a small scale farmer has been involved for you to be able to have that food on your plate. So when you hear about someone talking about seed sovereignty, it's something that needs to get us mad. Something that needs to get us acting and saying that, no, you cannot control our food. You cannot make our food about profit.
Cynthia, I'm going to ask a question that I need help understanding. So, as someone who has never farmed in their life, if I'm going to farm and I decide I want to get into farming, what does this law mean for me? Because I know not all seeds will be listed under the Varieties Act. So I'm keen to know the difference between the seeds that will be affected and those that won't be affected, and just try to understand how this will disrupt the entire seed system and how farmers work. Like, which seeds get to be listed under the Act, which don't, what satisfies us that?
I think Elizabeth is the expert.
It's the commercial ones.
That's
why you hear most farmers complaining about Irish potatoes, about maize, because that's what we grow as commercial crops in the country. So you find that most commercial crops, and the reason why they're also going for some of the indigenous cereals that we have, like the millets, the wheat and all that, is because they're also using that they're farming that on large scale, so that they can use it in alcohol production, bread and all these things. So basically when you look at the list of seeds that are being affected are seeds that are essential in terms of giving them profit. So if something is bringing them profit, then how can you get control? How can we control this? But also the problem with that is, in the process of them doing that, we are losing our indigenous seeds.
Yes. Because
there's no support on the ground when it comes to these indigenous seeds. Right now, farmers are doing so well because when you go around the country, and that's also one thing that people don't know, most farmers right now are saving their own seeds. And not because, one, it's because of the economic, they're trying to get away from that economic dependency, but also it's because of climate change. It's becoming really, really hard for them to be able to tell when and how to farm, and also to be able to tell which seeds to use, because the ones that they're using right now are not doing well. You'll be told that it's supposed to do well, it rains, it's not doing well. It doesn't rain, it doesn't do well. So most of them have now, and it's a sad reality, but it's a good thing, because even our farmers are learning from experience. What was sold to them as a one-size-fits-all, they've realized that, okay, this is not working. We need to do different. And that's why you go right now. And Cynthia even had so many farmers in the documentary who are saving their own seeds. So it's basically profit, and looking at how do we make more profit from these crops that are considered commercial crops. And it's really sad, because I don't think food is something that we are supposed to joke with like that, and just leave that control in a few individuals. And I know that the government is going to appeal, and they've already started the process of appealing, but I think this judgment sends a message, and not only to the government, but also to people in general. I know at times we struggle with the courts not doing us favors in terms of being with the people, but we see in this situation where the court really said, no, this is unconstitutional. So I think that also just tells us that the noise that we make and the no's that we say, that no, it works at times. And even right now, when someone hears about the win in 2025, they will look at it from, it just happened. No, this has been advocacy happening for the past 2 decades. Farmers have been making a lot of noise, CSOs have been making a lot of noise. The government was not listening. But over time, after so many mentions, after so many hearings, we are here. So I think this is just to communicate to us that at times we need to also just speak up, and not just be silent and say that they've put this policy in place, they're doing this. No, and it's just not in the food space. I think this is something that sends a message out to just say that we need to speak up and we need to say no. And if we come together and say no, then we will definitely win at the end.
Yeah. I think one of the things that also matters, I think, in this particular conversation is protection. Because we've seen, on the other end of things, we have a whole parliamentary system that does not care, and it keeps going even to the cabinet secretaries and people who have so much power. So I would ask Cynthia this, if in your investigation you were able to figure out if the seed banks that the farmers are setting up have some kind of protections in place. And also to you, Elizabeth, as someone who has really been in this fight, what kind of protections are farmers putting up for themselves, and what kind of protections do they need to have in the future so that we don't return to a place like this? Cynthia, go first.
I would like to mention something that I did not include in the story, simply because I wasn't really able to follow it up. I really wanted to, but at the onset of the story, while I was establishing who to interview, who to speak to, I spoke to farmers from as far as Nyanza, and there's one who told me they actually do have a seed bank. They work with a different CSO, not CBO, a community-based organization. And this person told me that every planting season, every new year, there's a certain lawmaker who goes to their seed bank to buy bags of the yellow maize yellow maize. There's an indigenous variety of yellow maize. So I really wanted to capture this lawmaker in that process. And I hope I'll be able to get that, you know. It's somewhere in Nyanza. I do not want to say where, so that it doesn't nuke my investigation. But then again, it made me wonder, so this is a lawmaker. He probably knows, or maybe he doesn't know, I don't know, that they passed a law that criminalizes the sharing and selling of indigenous seed varieties. Already he is breaking a law, but on the other hand, he's taking advantage. Where is he taking these yellow maize varieties? So that is, unfortunately, that is one thing I wasn't able to, and I didn't even get the opportunity to capture. But hopefully, because I also realized that this seed issue is one huge rabbit hole. Like, I feel like I just scratched the surface. There's still a lot to uncover. So if I get another opportunity, probably we'll be able to answer that question. But also, in that national crop variety list, because I was able to go through most varieties, you'd find even vegetables that we knew to grow wild that have already been patented.
By who? Like, who is patenting? Is just regular people, or like people who work in universities? And
exactly, people who work in universities and even universities themselves. So there's also that controversy where I spoke to farmers who are saying this particular variety that is currently being sold as a certified variety, actually it belonged to us. We've known it for 50 years, we've known it for 40 years. So those are some of the dynamics that are currently facing the seed industry.
So as part of the litigation, one of our key asks and why we wanted that amended is because the government was saying that indigenous seeds are mentioned in the Act, but mentioning it and defining what it is without protecting it and having specific clauses to protect it is basically erasing what indigenous seeds are. So that is one of the reasons why we were saying, no, we need the government to have specific clauses to say that this is how indigenous seeds are we are going to protect them. And currently, I'll go back to what I was saying, people power. That's what's working for communities right now on the ground. They come together, they work on their seed bank and they protect it. And at the county level, there's also been a lot of support from the county governments when it comes to the community seed banks. And we are seeing a very good example, like the seed bank that you covered in Nakuru, where Francis
seed sale.
Yeah, exactly. You find that the county government was in one way or another, the Minister of Agriculture supporting them. So it's like, yeah, we are going to protect you, let you do what, but that's also the thing. If there's no law protecting me, then when I'm in the matatu carrying my seeds, going to sell or doing whatever, the KFIS inspectors can stop you and they can seize your seeds. So you see, like, there's also word of mouth, but there's the actual harassment that goes into, like, us not having protection in the clauses that protect the farmers. So even right now, well, I can just say it's people power. They're just doing it. They're coming together, and I've said there's that point where you need to go and educate someone about something, to tell them, sigara inaua, ama pombe inaua. But there's that point where someone has already experienced it themselves, and they're like, oh no, this thing, sikuzi kifua yangu sikumui vizuri ama whatever, you see, whatever.
You can say collapse, like,
exactly.
So you're more aware that this is dangerous. Yeah.
So like that's where most farmers are right now. They've gone through these seasons, they've realized it's more like me being dependent on these people and less of like me empowering myself. Because if you look at the documentary, you see even the lives of these small-scale farmers. Even to just afford a decent living is a problem. And these are people who wake up every single day to go to the farm. So I think I can say time has also done us justice, which is wrong, but now because our government didn't want to, time has also done us justice because farmers themselves are experiencing the climate change. You heard even the documentary saying, this time mvua imekuja mapema, ama mvua ikukuja. So they're actually experiencing this on the ground. So it's less of us telling them that this is actually going to affect you like this, and you need maybe the adapted or resilient indigenous. They already know because they're experiencing it. And people power is working. That's why we are saying we need this law to be in place so that we can also the farmers can call the county governments to recognize, to budget for these seed banks, to support these seed banks at the county level.
There's a part of this conversation that I want us to focus on, mostly because I know we touched on it, but I really want us to get into it. Why should people care? It's something that should be the biggest news in the country that law didn't make it through. But then the government is even appealing it.
Yes.
That's a horrible show of,
I know.
of just interest in making things work. What do you think needs to be done for not only media, but then in general? What's missing in that whole chain of communication? Is it that this is such a tough thing to understand, that seeds being patented, like the regular person doesn't know what patenting is, but then what I'm failing to understand is, what can we do in this conversation right now that you think hasn't been done yet, A, and number two, what can we do to make this a big story, apart from Cynthia's story, which is massive in itself? What do you think can be done, and why should people care about the Seed and Plant Varieties Act as it is right now? Because what I'm afraid of is the government appealing, because we've seen them appealing things and things being overturned. I don't know which law it was.
I think
yes,
SHA. Even with the housing levy. And all of this had to do with public participation and the missing public participation link. And also it's like, you don't have a choice, you just have to pay. So how, again, just to reference what Tom is saying, like, why should we really be out there and up in arms?
I was having this conversation with Sid actually in the morning, because we were just talking about how at times this topic looks so technical and hard to relay out here. But I think it's also the work of, maybe I can say, the CSOs that are working in the seed sector. We also have a lot to do in terms of trying to maybe educate and create awareness. And something happened last year during the Maandamano, where we just did it was a simple digital push, because we were going towards a hearing, and we did some videos that we posted online, and in a week's time we had Occupy Machakos Low Courts hashtag trending, and I remember at some point we were even like, are we really going to go to Machakos Low Courts? Because what happens if people actually decide to occupy Machakos Low Courts? And I think the reason why that works so well is because we really tried to break down the conversation and just make it simple. I feel like at times it's also how we communicate. It's a lot of science, it's a lot of big jargons, and people lose, especially when you start saying seed sovereignty, someone is like, Sasa, what is that?
Sovereignty mean?
Exactly. I think so. We need to do better in terms of how do we communicate this in a way that will make sense to someone who is going home right now from work. They'll listen and be like, okay, this is actually something I need to also see how I can support and all that. So I think for me, I can say, given that I've worked in this space for some time, I can say is telling this story more and more, the way Cynthia has done, just to talk to farmers, capture these and share. But also maybe for people like me who are in the advocacy space, is how do we communicate it to make sense? How do we relate it to the everyday life? Like something as simple as, how does this affect you as a Kenyan? How does this affect your income? Wakishakata taxes zao yenye mbaki nayo, hiyo pesa itakuwa affected.
Can we do that? Can we do that? Can we do exactly that?
I think we can.
Yes. Can we do that in this conversation?
That's the thing. I try to make people understand that. It's like the price of your food is affected when a farmer cannot be able to have access to seeds to produce. Then if she's struggling, we saw in the documentary, if I have to pay 200 more to get maybe a packet of seeds, and then I pay another extra to get the fertilizers and pesticides, it means at the end of the day, when I harvest, at least remember, we have a farmer in the documentary who spends money to produce, which is more than what she usually spends, and then the maize doesn't do as well as she was hoping. So that means that when she goes to the market, minus the brokers, she will try to maybe sell it at a higher price with the extra 200 that she had to pay, so that she can get back her 200. And what that means is, by the time the broker buys the maize from Rift Valley and it comes to Nairobi, you will have to pay more. So in Amanisha, it affects the food that you eat every single day. And that's why nowadays you go to the supermarket and you have 1,000 bob and you look at your cart and you're like, Did I just spend 1,000 bob? Only 1,000 bob. So it's as simple as that. It's as simple as our food prices are going to be high, and apart from that, we're also going to get to a point where access to nutritious food is going to be a problem. Because access to nutritious food is going to be a problem because we are losing our indigenous seeds. And these indigenous seeds, they have quality when it comes to the nutritional value. So when we lose that, it means kesho ukienda Hosea unaambiwa you have this, you have that. And it's because of how we are producing food. Just a month ago, I had a conversation with a farmer who was also using a lot of pesticides in their farm to produce food. Right now, he can't see. We're actually doing his story that's supposed to come out next year in January. He can't see, he can't provide for his kids. So you can imagine. It's something that is affecting us every single day. I think all of us right now have a friend who has cancer or knows someone who has cancer.
Sorry to interject, Elizabeth. Speaking of pesticides, what's the link between the new seeds, the breeded seeds, and pesticides?
And that's the thing. That's why we keep saying that indigenous seeds are acclimatized to local conditions. So they're stronger, apart from what people think that they're usually inferior. So you can have your maize and you can plant it and you don't have to use excess fertilizer, synthetic fertilizer, or pesticides. Some of them naturally keep pests away. But you find that when you use breeded seeds, they are they automatically come linked to specific pesticides. And it's also part of the profit game that they're playing.
So they sell you a seed that you can only use a certain fertilizer
and a certain,
so that
exactly.
You can get a certain outcome.
And they tell you that when you go to the agrovet, they tell you that. I don't know if you got to experience that. They tell you that ukichukua hii seed, hii inaenda na hii na hii. So it's like that's what they tell you. So the farmer is expected to take the seeds and then the fertilizer. And then remember, these pesticides, they're not only polluting your food, the food that you're eating, they are also polluting your environment, the water that you're drinking, the air that you're breathing. They are killing the pollinators. So it means that as we continue like this, we are going to get to a point where it's going to be really hard for us to produce food as a country because our soils will be dead. Our water are polluted. There are no pollinators because we know most of the crops that we grow also depend on pollinators like bee and butterflies and all that. There are also no pollinators. So we are moving towards a system where food is going to continuously get more expensive because we are killing the environment that is supposed to literally help produce that food. But at the same time, we're also poisoning our bodies by these toxic pesticides.
It's a classic case of sorry, Cynthia.
Yeah, if I may add something that I learned, because I did this story under the Bertha Challenge 2025, and the challenge, it is a global fellowship. We are about 14 journalists from around the world, each of us tackling a challenge in our country, and the challenge was how do corporate interests and political interests affect smallholder farming in the face of climate change. And as part of the fellowship, there's something called Amplify, where we are supposed to now take back our work to the community. And one of the things that stood out in all of our projects is the need to listen to the farmers as well. Kina Esther, they can do their lobbying on one level, let's say when it comes to the law and the science part of it. But as journalists, are we reporting also what the farmers are saying? Because I also struggled in looking for articles or news items that have been done about seed sovereignty and that fight, and even articles that support indigenous varieties. So are we listening to the farmers? Are we listening to them as they tell us this particular sorghum variety called Alekwekal doesn't require continuous rainfall to grow? Just needs one cycle of rain, maybe just once, and it starts germinating and it can be harvested in a short period of time. Are we listening to those farmers? Are we communicating what they're telling us? So I think we also need to listen more to the farmers because they know these things. For example, you will hear that as opposed to the hybrid maize varieties, in our community there was a variety called Gevigo. And Gevigo, unlike the hybrid varieties where you have to harvest it really quick, if it starts raining in November beyond the expected period, they start rotting in the farms. But with the Gevigo variety, once it matures, it kind of locks itself, and no amount of extra rainfall is going to affect that variety. And this is also a variety that you can replant. Are we communicating? Are we telling these stories? I don't think we are doing that, because the kind of stories we're telling now is exalting
GMOs and stuff
GMOs and these interventions that are threatening the food diversity that we've been enjoying for years. I don't know how old you guys are, but
you don't open that. You don't open that can.
To add to what Cynthia just said, I studied Bachelor of Science in Agriculture in KU, but what I studied in school is exactly what I'm now fighting. I was being told that you have to commercialize, you have to. So you find that it's like we are locked in this system where everything is not working for us. The policy, the education system, what we're being taught is good and is supposed to be good. So we are ending up with researchers and scientists who also are exactly that. You see, it's GMO, it's the good thing. So I think it's kind of web of so many things that are set to make us fail and continue to have our food controlled by corporations. But I think having conversations like this, that is what gets us to really understand why we need to say no, why we need to change some of these things. So I think constantly telling the story and making sure there's that back and forth. We are listening, but we're also telling the story so the farmers can also hear from other farmers, hear from maybe research in terms of policy, their role at the county level, what can they do, how can we work together to help. So I think it's just making sure that we have that back and forth communication in terms of sharing information.
I like what you just say right now, because then, as someone who's studied this, as someone who has background knowledge on what it takes for agriculture to work, and obviously it's a learning process, and I'm realizing a lot of knowledge systems that do not care about the farmers. Cynthia say it's like, you are a farmer, you know this, but unajua nini. It's almost like you're disregarded so someone can sell you a product. Exactly. And so my question would be what's a possible scenario that would make the laws that are in place work? Or how, not just to counter them, but from someone who has agricultural knowledge, from the point of a farmer, from the point of someone who's studied in the formal system, you would say, how do you make the laws that are in place work, or how do you restructure the laws so that they work? I'm a Sisinima hater too, just because we don't like the system that's in place.
I think the first basic one is making our policies or our laws with the farmers present, and that's the basic thing that the Constitution also asks for, public participation, as basic as that. If we are saying that we are making these policies for them, to support them, to help them, to do all that, are they in the room? Are they represented? Are we really going to the villages to listen to what they're saying? Something as basic as that. So I think that is one of the places where we need to start from, just being able to listen and make these laws with the farmers, not against them. And also, your point also brings me to this conversation that I was having earlier, that regulation is necessary. Because regulation also helps to look at the issue of food security, food safety, and also quality. But bad regulation is harmful. And in our case, as a country, we are having bad regulations. And we continuously see this in the different agricultural bills that we have. And someone also asked, why now? This thing was passed in 20 whatever, why were you guys just complaining now? But it's because you remember in 2017 when President Uhuru, I think, was trying to get another term, they came up with the Big Four agenda. And the Big Four agenda, one of the key goals was food security. And when you look at what they listed as what they wanted to do under that was to increase production of food, to reduce imports, to support small-scale farmers with inputs and all that, and also to look at the issue of malnutrition. And when they said that, they were looking at it from a commercialized point of view. And as a result, 3 years, 4 years later, we were now seeing where government was giving subsidies to now the breeded seeds, the fertilizers and all that. That's what government was giving subsidies to, and even giving farmers and all that. And as a result of that, we got into looking at the different laws, and then we came across the Seed and Plants Variety Act. We came across the Livestock Bill, which was saying a smallholder farmer cannot be able to keep bees if they are not registered. The Irish one was if you are a trader and exporter, you are not supposed to do that if you are not registered, or you pay a fine of 5 million, and it gets worse. Yeah. So I think during that time, the government was so focused on looking at food from a development angle, but not also from a community well-being angle. So we were just looking at the quantity of the food. We want to have more, but is it safe? Is it quality food and all that? So I think that's where we lost it, because we were looking at just having more, because at that time we were dealing with a lot of issues of droughts. But I think what we can do right now as a country is basically just to listen to farmers. Let's make sure that when we are making policies, we are involving them. They have better judgment, because they're the ones who have been doing I cannot even speak for the farmers, because these are people who have been on the ground doing all this work. All this knowledge has been passed to them. So can we do something as basic as making sure that we have we are involving them in the conversations? And also us, as Kenyans, we can also just, it's our right to participate into these processes. So can we also just take advantage of that and participate in that? And also at the county level, let's just start holding them accountable. We need extension officers, we need infrastructure when it comes to places where our farmers can save their food, can do all these things. So can we also start calling for that? If they're saying our budget is for agriculture is this X amount, where does that X amount go to? So I think we also need to have that role to really question some of these things at the county level, because agriculture is also a devolved function. So can we be able to question that at the county level and just get them to be able to invest into something what's benefiting farmers and us rather than what's benefiting corporations.
Big corporations.
That's a really fair point. Even the county themselves can actually have laws in place to protect the farmers in their area.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
I'm afraid we get into the home stretch. We need to wrap this up. It's over an hour now. But so I'll start with the part where we tell you what you should participate in, and ask you to listen to Serikali, because Serikali wants to hear your opinion. They actually do, Justine. No, seriously, they want to hear your opinion.
Apparently, yeah.
2 bills on your plate in this episode. First of all, the tax policy proposal. That's the first step into one of the initial stages of creating the finance bill that then ends up being there at the end of April the next year. This is where the government reaches out to you and tells you to tell them what you want them to do with taxation. So do you want your milk taxed more? Do you feel like it's a bit too cheap for you, it's too affordable, the milk is going bad? Or do you need them to lower that tax because the milk is becoming expensive? What we saw last year was in the initial stages of the Finance Bill 2020, was it 4, the problematic one, the motor vehicle tax? Do you remember that? That came after these consultations, and who knows, maybe that came from a manufacturer somewhere, or someone said that they have it too cheaply, their cars, and they need to have the money. They have the money to spend, so they need the car more expensive to maintain.
Talipa.
Yeah, man, the Talipa also inua bei. So if you want the price of anything, if you're an industry player, if you're a regular Kenyan, you can send your opinions to submissions@treasury.go.ke by December 31st. Your proposal, they say, will inform the formulation of tax measures for consideration in the Finance Bill 2026 to support ongoing efforts to strengthen revenue mobilization and promote equitable and sustainable economic growth. As I say, this is the first step into creating the finance bill. Before the finance bill lands on your table as a final draft that the president signs into law, you should submit your opinions, because this will affect how much money you go home with at the end of the day. There's conversations about pay being increased, or more VAT, or pay going down, but definitely the government is on a revenue mobilization run, which your people. So who knows, maybe the possibility of a more stringent bill landing on our tables in 2026 is possible. We had a weaker, to some degree, compared to 2024 bill in 2025. It was a lot slimmer. It targeted specific industry and also raided the income of people because it gave KRA access to people's digital transactions. This is why you should care. It's important for you, and the 2026 finance bill will be here in maybe 7 months, and you need to participate. December 31st is a problem because they've only given people 2 weeks to send their opinions.
Christmas, really?
Imagine, they expect you to, in the middle of the chicken unakula uko shags, to think about what tax they're going to put on you. Usually you have until January 16th, 17th, maybe 20th to submit your opinions, but this time they want you to stop eating your ugali manze and focus on the new. Last week we also highlighted the autism management bill. It's a Senate bill submitted and proposed into the Senate by Senator Karen Nyamu. She says that, and most people would agree, that a lot of special needs legislation does not exist in the country. It is true that a lot more accessibility needs to be created in schools, a lot more attention needs to be paid to policy making for specific special needs children and adults in the country. But this bill has its problematic parts, and it also has very progressive parts. It's a double-edged sword, and that's why I'm bringing it to your attention so you can read it and understand, especially if you have a minor. And Justine, you and I might not have kids, or Elizabeth. We all might not have kids, but we will in 10 years. So it would be unfair for me to say that this bill should be specifically something that parents of children with special needs should focus on, because it involves all of us. For this one, you have until December 22nd, literally in like how many days? 7 days to submit your opinions. This one, you can submit your opinions to clerk.senate@parliament.go.ke and copy the health committee at healthcommittee.senate@parliament.go.ke by 5 p.m. December 22nd. Submit your opinions. Let your voice be heard. All these bills, both these bills, they are not very specific to industry. They involve regular Kenyans, and you should pay attention to it. Yeah, Justine. I'm seeing here that there is a crow removal for Christmas.
Yes.
What's up with that?
Yeah, we'll get into it just now. So this week on Justine explains it all very badly. So the Kenya Junior Secondary Education assessment results for the pioneering class are out, and congratulations to all the kids for going through the pioneering system of an education system that's very fairly new to the scene. So we all thought that the kids would be exempt from the parading of like who failed and who passed, but Kenya newspaper editors are very committed. You know, they needed people to photograph, and they got to it. So some kids, were carried shoulder high, as we've always seen. So I feel like the ground was left out of a lot of celebrations. Some parents didn't know what the new grading system is like, because they moved on from the point system to an assessment system, where you either get you exceeded expectations, that's the highest grade, and it has 2 bands. And then there's the middle tier bands, which is meeting expectations and approaching expectations, and then the lower bands is below expectation. Below for what? Like, below feels very targeted. It could be like tried to get to the expectations. I feel like that would be fairer. And each of these has 2 bands, so most students were graded on a more, we'll give you like a congratulations for the expectations that you met. And I feel like the more things change, the more they stay the same, because it's kind of like a very long stretched out A to D system. But I'm really hoping that whatever outcomes, that the students are going to get a good education henceforth. Some kids performed really well in the arts, but the problem is some of them want to stay in STEM courses. But that learning process so far is we atujui. That's what the government is going with. They don't know how to restructure that system, and I'm hoping that pivot will work. Private schools obviously outperformed public schools, and obviously they were going to outperform them because they have a competitive advantage because of the systems that they have, the access to resources like labs and all these teachers and teachers who are actually equipped to teach those learning areas. Unfortunately for public schools, they're at the mercy of the government, and the government is doing well with small fractions, especially when it comes to money. They're disbursing the least amounts possible. So, and that coupled with the cost-sharing approach, which is usually parents who have to cater for the rest of it, and parents are fighting with SHA, they're fighting with they're fighting with every other levy out there. And to quote the philosopher of our times, Femi Wan, wewe na shida za SHA utawezana. And most parents are really struggling on that front. So maybe the 87 shillings capitation that was sent to some school was supposed to perform some kind of magic. I'm really waiting to hear back. So out of the 1.1 million grade 9 learners who finished this particular assessment, 700,000 are going into STEM. Like they're very interested in STEM. This is the science and mathematics part of it and technology, and they require over 35,000 teachers. And there's a significant shortage in STEM because most of them are even going into aviation, metalworks, like all this difficult, very hands-on approach kind of system, and the government doesn't even have adequate teachers for this. So I'm really hoping that I'm very proud of the kids who like going through the system and powering through. It's a really big fight for the pioneers, but also GOK is calling this teething problems. But this is a full-on Kibogoyo movement because you're defunding education, you're paying teachers, like junior secondary teachers were paid 17,000. I think they're being paid, and they're interns. 17,000. Yeah. They're not being graduated. So there's the next cohort that's also going to really go through it. And I feel like this is a deliberate attack on educational institutions. So all your students, you still showed up, you still did that, you still studied, even with the privilege or lack of it. And I just think you should be proud of yourselves because there's an MP who can't read who's still in charge of the funding of your futures. There's still a Treasury CS who was very proud to say that they don't have money for free education. We have an education CS who released education capitation after the term was over. And they were like, good luck out there with the little money that you got. So I really hope that for the kids of this particular system that they don't have to struggle so much, that this is not like their determined future when they go into the senior secondary school and also with the higher education. So to my crows, okay, so it's not dear to my heart, but I think it's important. So apparently the hotel staff in coast hotels are really fighting with crows. Like there's so many crows in a lot of the coast hotels, like they have ballooned in number.
That's a true story.
It is. Even when I was like, this is my story for the week. It's very important. So Kenyan crows are currently terrorizing terrorists who are eating outside of these hotels. And the crows are foodies, I think. And they are very good at appreciating what the chefs have done. And they're building a feeding program for themselves, which has made them multiply in number. Yeah. And they're now everywhere. And at some point, I think it was estimated that there's 90,000 crows just like around the hotels. 90,000 is a lot of crows. That's a lot of crows. Yeah, but I feel like the food is already outside. I feel maybe if the crows were able to pay, maybe the hoteliers would not be so mad. But according to the hoteliers, like the crows are very much brokey freeloaders, and they cannot support them in their feeding program. So they want all of them gone, or at least their populations completely removed. So the hoteliers and KWS have a joint elimination operation program to end all these crows, and it has a title. The crows, it's called Crows No More. That's the title of the elimination project. I think they could have consulted me for a few names. I think we could have gone with Kilbeak,
that's fine.
Cromia River, Kunguru de la Muerto, which is my favorite. I think we need to lean into some languages. And KWS said that they're disposing these carcasses in a way that does not create like a health problem, because usually like if you throw them away, some of these other the carcasses could be picked on, and then it becomes a health hazard. Another reason the crows are being eliminated is because they are colonizers of the bird kingdom. Apparently they are very good at replacing native species, then spreading pathogens and becoming a public nuisance. So even if you add crow guilt, they don't care. They are not going. They don't possess it. So in case you're curious about how much this operation costs, it costs about 10 million. KWS and all these hoteliers need 10 million. They even did a fundraiser on the 13th. I don't know how much they raised. I'm not that nosy. But the reason I did this story is like to all the crows, where 10 million is being spent to end you as part of the drone kingdom and other animals in the bird species. I really hope the food you enjoyed was worth it, because they are coming for you. And if in case you guys come back to attack us, remember who told your story. It was me.
It was you. Because they're smart. They can do a whole revolution.
Exactly. Crows can even talk.
Yeah.
They're kind of scary like that. So we have done your story, so you get to protect me when the evolution comes.
I don't know, Justine. I didn't know the crows are having the industrial revolution. Like they are multiplying in the numbers. But interesting, Justine. Thank you for that. We had a comment in the middle of the show. Jonathan Spence says, diversify in what you grow, and he recommends we look up Richard Parkins. And then he adds that feed friends and family first. Anything else is a bonus. And I think that's the philosophy that a lot of people live by. In very, very few words. Very, very few words, by the way, because we've overrun so much. I'll let both of you have the final word on this one. For Elizabeth, I particularly want to ask you, is there anything, because we journalists tend to pick an angle and we have specific questions and a line of questioning that we want. Is there anything that you feel was very important that might have slipped under the radar?
Maybe just to mention about the appeal. So the AG has gone ahead to request the judge to put aside the judgment as we continue with the process of appeal. So what they're saying is they need the judgment to be set aside, even right now. Like they don't want it to be in place, they want it to be set aside as we continue with the process of appeal, and that just shows you how much the government is focused on
making this go through.
So it's I feel like the win is already a statement, and I think it already also says that the farmers on the ground are now aware, and they're not going to just allow the government to do whatever they want. So it's us to also try and support them as much as possible. The amendment is going to be another long journey, but we are not giving up, and we are going to fight together, and we are hoping that we also have you to help amplify that message and support what the farmers are doing on the ground, because farmers are actually doing a really good job on the ground. Thank you.
And Cynthia?
To the journalists, let's keep telling these stories. Let's listen. Also, there's something I had today called extractive journalism. Let's now do the opposite. Listen to the farmers, and also let's also be vigilant. There's, apart from the appeal, there's also a new amendment that is being proposed to the Seed and Plant Varieties Act. It's a Senate bill already tabled before Senate by Narok Senator Ledamo Lekina. So let's also be vigilant. Let's not just allow things to pass, because one of the things that happened even with the SPVA 2012 is that the timing was really critical when we were preparing for the general elections. So let's not let this one also slip between our fingers.
It's almost election cycle, so you know a lot of lobbying is going to be flowing into the country. Thank you, Cynthia, for making time. Thank you, Elizabeth, for making time as well. We deeply appreciate both of you for coming to the show. Justine, asante, kama kawaida. There is more to read, but we've run out of time, Justine, unfortunately. And thank you for watching us. Thank you for leaving your comments, Jonathan Spence. There's a comment also that he mentions that African seeds and African foods are far more superior and they should be promoted more, and I think all of us would agree. Thank you for watching us. Thank you for joining us throughout the year. I hope you have a Merry Christmas, and the sign-off today will be the trailer for Cynthia's latest documentary, The Seed Syndicate. the battle to control what Kenyan farmers can plant. Make sure you watch it. It's a 2-part series. It's brilliant. It goes far deeper into the topic of seed sovereignty. And I hope you have a good night and enjoy your holidays.
This story is about seeds.
Seed means life. Seed means livelihood. Seed means our culture.
Naweka mbili. Kuwekea watu sheria wakati wananunua mbegu si vizuri.
So when it was revised in 2012, it included certain punitive aspects.
Lakini mimi mkulima niko na hizo zote na serikali imenifunga mikono.
You have to borrow a loan so that you can plant maize because it's very expensive because of input.
Kupata hii mbegu ni shinda kwangu.
If an old grandmother from Mashinani wants to access these services, like the Kenya seeds, you would imagine a shosho would not really access where these stores are.
Kilimo mimi nafanya kwa sababu ya chakula.
Siwezi kumbuka kama tulinunua mbegu kwa watu, kwa any shop.
You see from regulations down to the bills and then to the regulation, the threats. It's nonsense.
In light of now what these reports are saying, do you have any regrets?
Yes, I do.